Have general audiences moved on from superhero movies? Hey guys, GothamGeekGirl here, and welcome to an exciting episode of my new podcast segment, Tea with Triple G, where we will discuss hot takes, straight facts, unpopular opinions, and more in-depth discussions in the world of pop culture, film, and comic books. So subscribe on my YouTube and Spotify for the latest reviews and discussions. Last week, we had an exciting episode about physical media and adaptations with Robert Meyer Burnett and Blu-ray Dan. Now today, we're going to discuss comic book movie fatigue. Are comic book movies dying, and what's actually killing the movie industry? Oversaturation plays a key factor in audiences' decline of comic book movie enthusiasm. This also ties into studios trying to capitalize, the rise of streaming services, and audience retention. Are people sick of the Marvel formula and factory pumped out content? With many comic book movies underperforming at the box office as of late, people have been saying that general audiences are shifting away from superheroes, and this raises the question, are superhero films actually starting to phase out? I don't think they'll ever completely go away, but I do understand the sentiment. The superhero genre was in its prime throughout 2008 through 2019, and it dominated the blockbuster scene. You can argue that there was already an oversaturation, but there was still quality and anticipation. As of late, many studios have wanted a hand in cashing in on the superhero craze. Instead of quality, we see more and more, like people that don't care about the source material or the subject matter, and studios just wanting to pump out content at the detriment of the characters. Sony can actually be its own chapter as a testament to this. So with writers and filmmakers that actually genuinely care about their craft and storytelling, they give us quality films like The Dark Knight, Joker, Avengers. Marvel peaked in 2012 with the first Avengers movie, but you can say that the birth of modern superhero movies was really around the year 2000 with films like X-Men, Blade in 98, one of my favorites, Hellboy in 2004, Punisher in 2004, Daredevil, Sam Raimi's Spider-Man films. In 2008, the first Iron Man movie released, and while the trilogy, you can arguably say it consists of like wildly varying quality, there's no doubt that Iron Man laid the foundation. It's the foundation to the success of Marvel Studios. It also introduced the famous end credit scenes. Also in 2008 was the first year that a superhero film retained the highest box office growth worldwide with The Dark Knight, which is regarded one of the best superhero films in history and still my favorite movie. But back to the Avengers movie in 2012. That was what really made the MCU a household name. And when we reached a modern superhero surge with comic book adaptations such as like Winter Soldier, Avengers, and the Dark Knight trilogy, this is really when comic book movies were in its core period. The Marvel Cinematic Universe was born, and the Avengers became a household name. There was a massive boom in superhero content everywhere. Now, there have been decades of comic book movies. So you ask, why the fatigue now? Legacy characters like Batman and Superman have been around for over 80 years, but they lasted so long because comics keep reinventing themselves. So if you focus on a good story, you can still make a great film. Fans are tired of the same generic formula, the same tone, comedy action, forced jokes, making every character a joke. Every single villain now in the MCU is an anti-villain and has a redemption arc. People are tired of this basic formula, and it's showing. The MCU is ruining characters like the God Butcher, who should have been irredeemable. Marvel also does this with Loki, but the God Butcher, he's described as one of Marvel's most notable and powerful male supervillains. He's also Thor's greatest foe. And nothing against Bale. His performance was great, but he worked with what he was given. And come on, God the Gore Butcher, he should have been an unstoppable force and, well, a God killer. Don't even get me started on the MCU's depiction of the Hulk and how they dumb down characters to serve as jobbers, which is essentially my biggest complaint about Marvel and Disney as of late. Everything has become like too childish. There's no consequences, no ramifications. Everyone has a redemption story. It's getting out of hand. That's why films that took chances and went against the formula, such as Matt Reeves' The Batman and Todd Phillips' The Joker, are so successful because they broke away from the safe storytelling, overproduced CGI, and just having jokes for the sake of it. Now, Avengers Endgame, it served as a conclusion and a goodbye to some of our favorite beloved characters. But afterwards, everyone wanted to know how will Marvel up its stakes? What's going to be the next big event? Then COVID happens. Marvel's Phase 4 gets pushed back a year. Entire projects were moved. The release schedule was completely changed. And now this is where we get oversaturation. Instead of good storytelling, the Phase 4 of MCU was like a huge overhaul of Disney Plus shows. You can actually argue that streaming services are what is actually killing the movie industry. Phase 4 of Marvel had more material than any other phase combined, probably combined, the most divergent storylines with stories taking place at different points in the timeline, and some even during earlier phases. With the addition of television series, there was more MCU content than ever before. But this wasn't a good thing. This wasn't a plus. This also was like a way that you have to keep up with everything. It means you have to keep up with all of it, and it's a little over the top. I will say it, Disney Plus has ruined the MCU. Keeping up with the MCU is a hassle in itself. Most of the shows are mediocre, rushed, watered down characters, substandard quality. The VFX is atrocious, absolutely rushed, and now we know why. They weren't paying their workers. But I've said it over 1,000 times, the 6-episode format does not work. It's poor storytelling. And I've also said over the last few years, quality over quantity. The frequency of releases has gotten so ridiculous. Instead of anticipating a movie for years, we get content on a monthly basis. I'd rather wait a year for a great movie. However, in other universes, several TV shows have proven themselves worthy, such as The Boys and Peacemaker. They're both absolutely fantastic, well done, and were well received. Now, The Boys pokes fun at superheroes, and it centers on tropes in the superhero world and the current political climate, so it's actually quite genius. But let me say, we did see some successful hits from Phase 4. I didn't hate it. Black Panther Wakanda Forever was phenomenal. Spider-Man No Way Home. I love Shang-Chi. I love Miss Marvel. The quiet hit, Werewolf by Night. So there were some really good things to come from it. But there's the argument about comic book movies ruining movies. A lot of directors have chimed in on this. The Academy Award-winning film director Martin Scorsese called these movies theme parks, and he said they're not cinema. And this sparked a huge heated debate throughout Hollywood and on social media. And he also said many of the elements that define cinema as I know it are there in Marvel Pictures. What's not there is revelation, mystery, or genuine emotion and danger. Nothing is at risk. The pictures are made to satisfy a specific set of demands, and they are designed as variations on a finite number of themes. So he's right in a sense, especially with the current state of the Marvel Universe, and other directors have also stated their opinions on comic book movies. Some were a little over the top and a little negative, because there are some great films to come from comic book movies. But he does have a great point about there being no danger, and like I mentioned, no ramifications. Ridley Scott and other directors have also chimed in on this. So the biggest correlation is poor performance and box office numbers. With movies like Morbius, Black Adam, Shazam 2, Ant-Man, Quantumania, and The Flash, there's been a major decline in the popularity of comic book movies. Blue Beetle should have done way better. We'll see when Aquaman 2 arrives, how it does at the box office. We did get some really great movies this year, like Black Panther, Wakanda Forever, Guardians of the Galaxy 3, which is Phase 5, and No Way Home. So another major setback for the movie industry in general is the rise of streaming services, which you mentioned, like Disney Plus. So a lot of people are now waiting for movies to hit streaming instead of seeing it in theaters. So studios are already losing a lot of money. The Flash is an unfortunate example of how audiences feel about the climate of DC pre-Gunn, because audience already gave up on DC, and Gunn's premature announcement hasn't really helped either. So another setback for film and TV is audience pushback. So audiences are already divided. People are either a fan of one person or not, and nobody knows how to be objective. So fans are arguing over like political statements, and shows are like overshadowing characters with bias. And now people won't watch She-Hulk because it's too feminist. And meanwhile, the real problem is like bad writing instead of focusing on storytelling. So there's pushback, audience toxicity. Marvel's no longer making sense continuity-wise, which is more of a problem. And they're also using comic event names to, garner attention. Meanwhile, it has nothing to do with the comic. Like Secret Invasion was half-assed. It should have been a huge connecting event, and it was a mess. So what's actually killing the movie industry? Streaming services, impatient audiences, audience retention. Too many people are going with nostalgic factor and like watching unnecessary sequels and like bad reboots. There are some good remakes, but it's not the comic books that are killing the industry. It's like streaming services. So like Red Notice, Gray Man, The Ghosted. These are terrible movies that feel like they're written by AI, and movies are focusing on celebrities. So they rather throw in a bunch of big names rather than have an actual good story. So that's what I think is actually killing the movie industry. So what are your thoughts? Let me know in the comments. And make sure to subscribe to Gotham Geek Girl and Tea with Triple G.